there is nothing fundamentally wrong with universal banking. Same way there is nothing wrong with monoline banking. My worry is that we move from one system to the other without adequate discussion of a broad spectrum of stakeholders. So I would think that it is not just enough for us to follow what they are doing in the UK or what they are doing in the US. We should take a look at each time we have a system. Let us analyze it, and that analysis should be done by not just one institution, by far more people before we move to the next one. Otherwise, we'll find a situation where we'll just be going from A to B, back to A, back to B, and these things are very expensive. That's the only concern I have. I have nothing, I don't see anything wrong with general banking. I don't see anything wrong with monoline banking. It's just about, if you must make a choice, let us have a more inclusive dialogue before we decide what is best for us. Well, I as an individual have had occasion to mention that I find it strange that once in a while the CBN publishes rates, and yet the CBN doesn't see anything wrong with the very, very wide margin between rates that are being paid for fixed deposits and rates that are being charged by banks on loans. This is the first time in a very, very long time that I've seen that the rate for treasury bills, it's even higher than the rate that the banks are offering. The treasury bill is issued by the federal government of Nigeria, and that is the safest investment anybody can have. I think even if we had such a disparity, it should be for, say, 2 months, 3 months, but we've had it for about a year now. So I think something fundamentally is wrong. You are discouraging savings. At the same time, the banks are merely taking deposits and buying treasury bill rates and sitting on the money. What is also more, banks are not lending. And so to me, something is fundamentally wrong, and the earlier we correct it, the better. Well, as an individual, I've always been in favor of removing fuel subsidy. But of late, as I listen to the debate, I begin to worry what really is going on. In principle, I don't think the subsidy has played the kind of role it was intended to play. In other words, only very few individuals or corporations or companies benefit from the subsidy. In fact, as we talk now, it's only in places like Lagos and perhaps some of the other areas that you can find fuel to buy at 65. I understand in some other parts of Nigeria they buy at a much higher rate. So the question is, what is the what is the point in the subsidy? Now, the other challenge therefore has been that we had removed subsidy at least 2 or 3 times in the past. How come we get locked into this problem? Why don't we allow a situation where the thing adjusts itself over time, rather than have a fiat, fix a rate by fiat, and create this huge problem that we have today? So if I may just answer your question, one, in principle, I'm in support of fuel subsidy removal, but I think that we should have a structure that will ensure that we don't get into this problem going forward. The monetary authorities are doing their best, but for me, what they are doing looks like firefighting. And unless you address the fundamentals, all this firefighting would secure you some stability for 1 week or 2 weeks, and then 3 weeks down the road, you begin to have some other problems. Why am I saying that? First, I am concerned that Nigeria as a country has really not come up with any package to deal with the global economic crisis. We are going on as if everything is okay. You're still talking about large number of ministries and extra ministerial departments. Let's talk about large salaries for senators and House of Rep people. Let's talking about 101 special advisors and senior special advisors. We are spending and going on as if everything is okay. All over the world, every government is talking about what can we do to reinforce, to rein in expenditure of government and to embark on an austerity measure. In my view, Nigeria should have been in austerity 18 months ago. So we are 18 months behind time. And my concern is that when the whole thing will blow up, our case might be worse than that of Greece. So we need to begin to drum it to the people's consciousness that our economy is not in the right shape. There's no point pretending. And we need to begin to take steps. First, cut down the number of ministers you have, cut down the number of special advisors, rationalize the agencies, bring down what these politicians are earning, all these assembly people. Many of them are part-time anyway. Let's send the right signal that the country needs to adjust its. I mean, look at what is happening now. We are spending 70% or more on recurrent expenditure and spending just less than 30% on capital. Where can we go from there? You listen to the guy who spoke today from Canada, what they've done with their debts and all of that. Again, those are issues that we are not addressing. The Obasanjo regime did a lot to ensure that it brings down our external debt. But what has happened since then? Virtually every state is borrowing all over the place. I mean, and the question is, what are we doing for the fiscal part of our equation? There is so much CBN can do. There is so much the monetary authorities can do, unless their efforts are complemented by that of government in terms of a seriousness to address our spending pattern, our consumption pattern, and our economic management. We're just wasting time. That's a difficult one to answer, because for me, I didn't like the way the banks were acquired as an individual. I thought that it's something that calls into question the integrity of the regulators, because I believe that integrity is very critical. If you say you are giving them up to end of September or end of whatever to recapitalize, for goodness sake, give them up to that. If you didn't announce that, then you are under no obligation to wait on any of them. But once you announce that as a public policy, you don't then come back 2 months before that time to say you are nationalizing them because they are in critical condition. Those critical conditions, did they happen just over 1 week? So for me, that's something that it itself puts into question or put into risk the integrity of regulators, because next time people will now begin to second guess what the regulators say. Having said that, of course, there is nothing new in government coming in to take action when it finds that one or two institutions pose a risk to the system. But the question is, all these things must be done in a way that it is transparent, in a way that is properly explained, so that people don't begin to spin stories around it. So if I may make myself clear, I don't see anything wrong or usual with nationalization, because it is done not just in Nigeria and other parts of the world. If the authorities find that it is necessary, the only thing I question with is why make an announcement and say I'm giving you up till this time, and you don't wait for that time to come before you as if you are doing what is called ambush to get them on board. The other thing that also has not been done is sufficient explanation has not been done as to why we have to do that kind of ambush, and what does that mean going forward for the confidence that the public has for regulatory pronouncements. So that's my answer to that question. The acquisition, I mean, if you follow what has been going on, I don't see anything wrong with the acquisition, because this followed the right process. An AGM of each of the banks to approve, court-ordered process is being followed, regulatory approval, SEC approval, CBN approval. The only one I may comment on is the cat and mouse relationship between the shareholder associations and the authorities. That, I'm sure, was not properly managed. To the point that, if you see what happened, because the banks that were nationalized, it kind of put some pressure on the banks that were not being involved in the acquisition. It's like, you better go and agree to this acquisition, otherwise you'll be nationalized. So to me, that pressure in itself would make the entire process not to be what we would call a smooth or a voluntary thing. It is like you have the sword of demagogue behind you, that you saw what happened to your cousin 2 weeks ago. You better go and attend this meeting and agree to this merger, otherwise we'll nationalize you, and if we nationalize you, your share becomes zero. And so you can see that all the court-ordered agents went smoothly thereafter. Again, we need to, maybe over time in the future, we need to sit down and examine that and see whether there are better ways of doing those things.